योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिम् गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुर्गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः हरिः ओम्. In the previous session, we had started with Sutra 3.23, which was maitryādiṣu balāni. And there you had heard some very nice way of looking at this sutra by reference to what was referred to as the Maitri card, the Karuna card, the Mudita card, and so on. So what the sutra says is, by Sanyama, where Sanyama is Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi, by Sanyama on maitryādi, Maitri, etc. So this is a reference to a sutra which we have already seen. Maitri, Karuna, Muditopekshanam, Sukadukka, Punya, Punya Vishayanam, Bhavanata, Chitta Prasadanam. So there is a list of things, Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha, etc. So maitryādiṣu, by Sanyama on those, what is the Siddhi? The Siddhi is balāni. So that is what the sutra says. Now the Bhashya will clarify certain things which was touched upon in the previous session, specifically with respect to Maitrādi includes which all in that list, and why Upeksha is not included, and so on. So we'll look at that. So today we begin with the Bhashya, since in the previous session we had covered the Sutra. So we take up the Bhashya of maitryādiṣu balāni, Sutra 3.23. So Vyasa begins. He says, Maitri Karuna Mudite iti Tisro Bhavanaha. So Vyasa specifically says that there are three. Tisraha means three. So how many bhavanas? So Maitri, the three will be Maitri, Karuna, Mudita. These three. So then, what about these? Tatra bhuteshu sukiteshu maitrim bhavayitva maitri balam labhate. So this is very similar to the sutra we had seen earlier, 1.33, in the context of Chitta Parikarma, where it had been said that for the Chitta Parikarma, the purification, the Shuddhata, the Prasannata, the pleasantness of the Chitta, a whole series of sutras prescribe different things. And this was the first among those. So it had been said that Maitri, Karuna, Mudita and Upeksha. So in a simple translation, friendship, sympathy or empathy, joy and indifference towards Sukha Dukkha Punya Punya Vishayana, towards people who have obtained happiness, people who have obtained sorrow, people doing meritorious deeds, people doing non-meritorious deeds. So Sukha, Dukkha, Punya and Apunya, respectively. So towards people who have attained happiness, the yogi, if he expresses friendship, his own chitta has a chitta parikarma pleasantness. People who are experiencing sorrow, towards them if there is karuna, there is a certain sympathy, kindness, empathy, then the yogi gets his chitta parikarma. Similarly, mudita, joy towards punya, meritorious deeds, upeksha, indifference towards non-meritorious deeds. So yogi sort of insulates himself and doesn't pay any attention to the non-meritorious deeds, and himself doesn't become struck with sorrow or hatred, etc. So that was from the Sutra 1.33, which is now being referenced here, where Vyasa says, Tatra bhuteshu sukhiteshu. So the happy beings, the beings who have obtained happiness, sukhitaha bhutaha teshu. So the beings that have obtained happiness, tatra bhuteshu sukhiteshu, maitriim bhavayitva, by generating friendship in yogi's own chitta, what happens? Maitri balam labhate. So the bhavayitva, generating friendship or bringing about friendship as the alambanam of the chitta, the support of the chitta, is an exalted deed because here it is a reference to sanyama. So there is a dharana, dhyana, samadhi process that brings about the feeling of friendship in the yogi's chitta, which is immaculate, pure, etc. And the siddhi from that is the maitri balam. So the maitri balam means he gets the power of maitri. So he can generate friendship wherever needed. So that is a siddhi. So elsewhere it is articulated as swasya parasya va pareshu maitradhyartha prayatna nirapeksho bhavati iti yavat evam karunadišvapi bodhyam. So in Yoga Siddhanta Chandrika, which is another text, it is said, swasya parasya va pareshu maitradhyartham prayatna nirapeksho bhavati. So the yogi gets such a siddhi, such a bala that without any attempt to get friendship, he automatically obtains friendship. That is the siddhi. Or if there is a reference to karuna, automatically obtains karuna. So that is what was referred to as a maitri card, karuna card, etc. So the siddhi is such that the yogi has the ability to generate friendship, etc., without the need for any effort. So tatra bhuteshu sukhiteshu maitriyam bhavayitva maitri balam labhate. Dukkhiteshu karunam bhavayitva karuna balam labhate. So similarly for karuna. So among the dukkhita bhutas, the beings who are undergoing suffering, sorrow, so they are dukkhitas. Now by bringing about karuna towards them in his own chitta, through the process of sanyama, the yogi obtains karuna balam. So when the yogi can bring forth kindness as and when needed, so that is the karuna balam that comes about as a siddhi. Punyashileshu muditam bhavayitva mudita balam labhate. So similarly, Vyasa, since it says the sutra says maitryādi, Vyasa is going enumerating one by one. So punyashileshu, among the beings for whom doing meritorious deeds is part of their nature. So that is known as Sheelam. So Punya Sheela. So people who are meritorious by their own nature and habit. Then towards them, by bringing forth mudita, joy, in his own chitta, through the sanyama process, the yogi gets the siddhi, which is a balam, which is sort of a power, so that the joy can be similar kind of joy he can generate as and when needed with prayatna nirapeksha. So without any need for effort, it can automatically come. So he gets that kind of a power. So next Vyasa says, Bhavanataha samadhiryah saha sayyamaha. So he clarifies, because Vyasa so far has been saying bhavayitva. Bhavayitva means bringing about in his chitta, making that the support of the chitta. Now he clearly says bhavanataha samadhi. So by doing this, in each of the cases enumerated, whether it is maitri, karuna, etc., from that bhavanam, by bringing that chaitic state, mental state, the samadhi that gets generated, samadhi yaha, saha sanyamaha. So that is the sanyama. So here the process of samadhi and sanyama is being clearly mentioned in case there was any doubt because of the word bhavayitva without any mention of sanyama or samadhi. So that gets clarified. Tataha. Tataha means from that sanyama, balāni abandhya viryani jayante. So from there are these balas, this power, which abandhya cannot be opposed, cannot be vanquished. So these kinds of powers are born, jayante, they take birth. Now Vyasa clarifies that in the Sutra 1.33, there was Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha. What about Upeksha? That was not mentioned so far. So he says, Papashileshu Upeksha Natu Bhavana. So he says, Maitri is a positive feeling, positive in the sense that something that has its existence. So that was Bhavayitva, that could be brought about in the Chitta. On the other hand, Upeksha is not, it is more about absence of any feeling. So it is negative not in the sense of good or bad, negative in the sense of being defined by non-existence. And therefore, Papashileshu Upeksha Natu Bhavana, it is not a specific bhavana to be generated. It is not something, a specific positive entity with existence, which forms the support of the chitta. In fact, it is the lack of anything, it is complete indifference. And therefore, it is not a bhavana, natu bhavana. Tatascha, tasyam nasti samadhi. Therefore, it is not tenable to say that one does samadhi on that. So this is tataha tasyam nasti samadhi ityatah na balam upaikshatah tatra sayama bhavat iti. So therefore there is no balam, no power or no siddhi being generated from upeksha, because upeksha itself does not lend itself to sanyama because of it having any lack of positive existence. And therefore it is clarified that while the sutra says maitryādi, it does not include the it does not include upeksha as one of the things to have sanyama on. Okay, so that is this sutra, maitryādiṣu balāni. So that is Sutra 3.23 along with the Bhashya and covers the 7th Sanyama.
So, Maitryādi balas are referred to. And as we said, why is the need about the Maitri card, Karuna card, Mudita card, etc.? It is because we all experience this, that because of our internal condition and external condition, even if you have friendly nature, our friendly nature doesn't manifest because of internal disturbance within us. Because the mind is agitated, tormented, tossing, harassed. So many times, although we have friendliness towards happy people, it is because of our internal typical condition, we cannot be really having friendliness towards happy people. Generally, we have friendliness towards happy people. And other external thing is, sometimes there is such a person that we cannot be friendly to that person at all for some reason. So there are external factors and internal factors where our Maitri cannot manifest. Now, with the so-called concept of card, Maitri card, when we need it, when the yogi needs it, he will be able to swipe it. So although he is not able to be friendly because of internal condition, or because you cannot be friendly because of external factors such as that person, one can never be friendly. Some people are such that you cannot be really friendly to them. But if you have a friendly card, that can be swiped and the friendliness can manifest. That is the Maitri Balam. Sometimes even case of Karuna, compassion, pity, empathy, sympathy, it is because of our subjectivistic condition, the sympathy cannot manifest. Or because of external condition, because of that person, that situation and condition, we cannot be compassionate. Empathy cannot surface. Sympathy cannot surface because of external factors. So many times we come across an experience that where we should be friendly, we cannot be friendly. Where we can be friendly, we cannot be friendly for various reasons, subjectivistic and external reasons. So is the case of Karuna. Generally, we want to be compassionate. But because of internal factors, internal condition that our mind is tormented, harassed, disturbed, or because of the object at sight, person at sight, we cannot just have compassion for such a person. And therefore, we need this card. Because I told you about something like credit card. So, when you don't have it, you can get a credit. When you don't have money, still you can be using the credit card, and then you can be meeting with your expenditure. So that's why this card concept we told you about. So Maitri, Karuna, Mudita. Mudita is another thing. It cannot be having gladness but because of internal disturbance or because of that person. The person has committed meritorious deed, but because we have detest or dislike or hate for that person, we just cannot be delighted. We cannot be happy. Generally, we are happy with someone committing virtue, somebody meritoriously conducting life, meritorious deed handled, carried out. We will be generally happy. But there are sometimes such a person that however great merit he commits, we are critical. Or because of our disturbed state of mind, we cannot appreciate someone being meritorious. So these are the factors because of which we understand the need of Maitri card, Karuna card, Mudita card. So it can be swiped whenever we don't have it in our fingertips or at hands, in our hands, we can swipe the card. So that is why the Bala here, Maitri Bala, Karuna Bala, Mudita Bala. We might be having Maitri. We don't have Maitri Bala. Maitri Bala means it is coming handy. Karuna Bala, we might be having compassion, but don't have Karuna Balam. So is case of Mudita. So here, Vyasa makes it clear that by Maitri Bhava being practiced by a yogi, he develops Maitri Balam. We don't develop any Balam like that by our good qualities, noble qualities. We are just recognized as noble people, that we are friendly people. We don't entertain with enmity. But when a yogi is having this bhavana practiced, or the Maitri Bala comes up. So also you might be having compassion, but we don't have compassion power. So we have Maitri, may have Maitri, but don't have Maitri power. But by bhavana, which was mentioned in the first chapter, which was quoted to you just now, 1.33. So, by bhavana, Maitri Balam, Karuna Bhavana, Karuna Balam, Mudita Bhavana, Mudita Balam. So, yogi gets that Balam. And because of this yogi's consciousness, he can get into samadhi on those balas. on those bhavanas rather. We don't get into samadhi by on Maitri Bhava because our Maitri is not so rich. But yogi's Maitri Bhava will be so rich that he'll be able to get into samadhi on Maitri Bala. The Karuna is so strong and resourceful that there can be Karuna samadhi on Karuna Bhava. So also mudita. So there will be samyama, samadhiriya samyama. So Karuna is so rich in yogi that they will be locus for samadhi process. Our good qualities are not for samadhi process. Profoundly practicing mudita upeksha bhavana, he can samadhi process on it. Then the exceptional case is upeksha bhava. Upeksha is indifference. So when you have indifference to something, the chitta doesn't stick on because of indifference. The chitta won't be established wherever you have indifference. Because that is the very meaning of indifference, upeksha bhava. And therefore Vyasa makes it clear that maitryādiṣu means only maitri, karuna, mudita and not upeksha. Because upeksha is such a bhava that the chitta will not sticking on to that. It is because of very nature of indifference. So indifference is not entertained in chitta, locus for samadhi. And that is why that bhava has been excluded. Then tataha balāni avandhaviryaṇi amogha shakti. It is not just power that yogi gets, but amogha shakti, avandhavirya, that it is undiminishing, it is endless, and it is so resourceful that nowhere there will be shortfall. In no condition, at no time, there will be shortfall or insufficiency. So that is the amogha shakti. The yogi gets amogha shakti in these bhavanas. And that's how they become Maitri power, Karuna power, and Mudita power. So these are the three powers based on 1.33 Sutra, which Vyasa mentions and Vyasa delineates.
Okay. So we move on to the next sutra, which in some sense it is related since it talks about balam. This is the next Sanyama, Sutra 3.34, and it says, baleṣu hastibalādīni. So, when the yogi does sanyama on certain balas, certain strength, certain powers, he obtains that kind of power. The sutra is short, the bhashya is also short. Hasti means elephant. So, for example, if there is sanyama on the power of the elephant, the yogi obtains the strength of the elephant. So, this brings about the sort of the power, the magic, or the efficacy of the sanyama process. So, Vyasa says, hastibale sanyamat, hastibalo bhavati. So, if there is a sanyama on the power of an elephant, on the strength of an elephant, then hastibalo bhavati. That same strength, hastibalaha, the yogi becomes a hastibalaha. He is one whose balam, whose power, whose strength is similar to that of an elephant. So hastibale sanyamat, hastibalo bhavati. Vainateya bale sanyamat, vainateya balo bhavati. Vainateya means Garuda, the vehicle of Vishnu, who is said to be very, very powerful. In Puranas, etc., there are certain descriptions, such as with one feather he can lift the entire earth, and so on. So there is an exalted strength of Garuda, So Vainateya Bale Sanyama. The yogi also is so powerful that if he decides the Sanyama on the strength of Garuda, which is known as Vainateya Balam, then he himself becomes Vainateya Balaha. He attains the kind of strength that Garuda has. Now another example is Vayu Bale Sanyamad Vayu Bala Ityevam Adi. So similarly, by Sanyama on the power, the strength of the Lord Vayu, the strength of the wind. Wind is said to be very, very powerful because it can carry along with it large objects when it comes in huge force. So Vayu Bala Sanyama. By Sanyama on the strength, the power of Vayu, Vayu Bala. So he becomes Vayu Balaha. The yogi himself becomes one who has the strength of the Lord of the wind. So Ityevam Adi. Similarly for other things. So this is a category of possible Sanyamas with a category of possible Siddhis, all related to strength and power, with strength and power of different entities taken as the support for the Sanyama. So that is Sutra 3.24.
Baleṣu, baleṣu hastibalādīni. So there are other powers as well. We saw the three powers: maitri power, karuna power, mudita power. Are they only three? No. Because in dynamics of human life, we require different kinds of powers. And many times we face deficiency of powers, and therefore we concede, after all, I am a human being. So there are certain powers which are being mentioned, such as hastibalam. Hastibalam means power of elephant. Elephant is recognized to be the most powerful animal. The strength and power of elephant is recognized by mankind. And elephant is known for its tremendous power. So many times we need to carry out certain powerful works, and single-handedly we cannot be doing it. And that's why we try to collect people and carry out such feats where a lot of power or energy is needed. We come together and we try to do it. Because one cannot be doing single-handedly. It is because of the deficiency of strength that human being has. So, whenever yogi needs something that can be called as elephantine strength, elephantine power, it is available with him. It is why? Because there is hastibala sanyama. So therefore Vyasa says hastibala sanyama hastibalo bhavati. So yogi will be getting these sanyamas in various superhuman powers, and therefore he has those arts of superhuman powers. So we know different animals have different powers. Like animal like cheetah is known for its velocity to run, or the elephant for its power. We also refer to something as power of a tiger, power of a lion. As a matter of fact, power of even ant. Ant also has a significant power because it can carry 200-300 times its own weight and climb up a vertical trunk of a tree. So it will carry the weight in its mouth, which is 200-300 times its weight. Can we imagine that we are trying to lift a weight which is 200-300 times our weight? That's not possible. But in the animal world, it is interesting and fascinating to know the powers of various animals and various creatures. So here Hastibala, referring this way to Hastibala, and of course Sutra hastibalādīni, etc., 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 speaks about various such powers. Vainateya bale samyamat vainateya balobha bhavati. Vainateya. As you heard just now, Vainateya is that Garuda, the eagle, the Garuda bird. That power is also incredible. It has so many powers. Its vision, then its physical power, its power in its legs, that it can lift creatures and fly in the sky. So its legs are strong, its wings are strong, its beak is strong, its eyes are incredibly strong. So Vainateya power manifests in several ways. And that is perhaps one of the reasons why Lord Vishnu opted for his vehicle as Vainateya. Vainateya also means the deity like Hanuman. His name was Vainateya. He was also called Vainateya. Bhima, Vayuputra, he was also referred to as Vainateya, and we know them for their incredible power. Hanuman was known for his powers. Hanuman's body was known for his power. Hanuman's mind, Hanuman's psyche consciousness was also known for its power, exalted power. Bhima, similarly in Mahabharata, was known for his strength, that he was invincible in any duel. So that's the Vainateya Balam. Similarly, the Vayu Balam is said to be incredible. And we know that power, or that engineering subject of which deals with air as the power, pneumatic engineering, because there's enormous power in the element of air, Vayu Balam. Vayu, we don't experience on the planet Earth, and therefore we have no idea of what is this Vayu Balam. Because even a cyclone or a hurricane or tornado at the velocity of 100 odd kilometers is quite devastating. At the most, the velocity can go to around 100 miles per hour. But on a planet like Uranus, the winds can blow at unbelievable velocity of nearly 2,000 to 3,000 miles per hour. This will never happen on the planet, but it will happen on Uranus. And that is, imagine any cyclone at 2,000 miles per hour. What will happen? We will all perish. The whole planet will perish. Living, non-living things will perish. Earth may itself be not in its place with 2,000-3,000 miles velocity of wind. So Vayu Balam is also known for its strength. So Simha Vyagradi, as I said, Simha Balam, Vyagra Balam. So there are various animals and creatures and manifestations which are known for their incredible power and strength. And the yogi is able to have bunch of such cards by Samyama on Hastibaladīni, Samyama on Vainateya Balam, Vayu Balam, Simha Balam, Vyagra Balam, and various. That's why Patanjali says Adi, etc., etc., etc. So yogi can have in his repertoire, quiver, enormous energy forms. And that's how he is able to quickly go past the life conditions unscathed. We suffer in our life conditions because we lack powers to face. Whereas the yogi has that facility that he will not be finding limitations coming his way because of these powers. Bala, various kinds of bala, buddhi bala, jnana bala, shakti bala, various kinds of bhavana bala, as we saw just now. So many kinds of balas are required in human life, and there is a dearth of it, whereas yogi will never suffer from the dearth of such balas. So it's an incredible sutra. A lot of imagination can go here for anyone who has some literature skills. and try to understand how this manifestation might work. Okay.
Yes. And we can also make a reference to the episode in Ramayana where Vishwamitra and Vasishtha are engaged in combat. And then Vasishtha, with his yogic powers, generates counter forces to force the military might of Vishwamitra, who was a king at the time. So that's also very nicely presented in the Ramayana, which shows the balam of the yogi. And Vishwamitra ultimately accepts that the bala of the yogi is much higher than that of a king. Now, Sutra 3.25, which is the ninth among the sanyamas being discussed. It says, Pravrityālokanyasaat Sukshma Vyavahita Viprakrishta Jnanam. Once again, this is a reference to a prior sutra. And again, that prior sutra is in the context of the Chitta Parikarma of the first chapter. So, it says that the Pravrityālokanyasat. So, Pravritti Aloka. So, there is this context of Jyotishmati Pravritti. This comes from the Sutra 1.36, where it says Vishokava Jyotishmati. And the full sentence because there was a Anuvritti from a previous Sutra 1.35 that was used to complete the sentence of 1.36. So the full sentence was Vishokava Jyotishmati Pravritirutpanna Manasaha Sthiti Nibandhini. So there was something called the Jyotishmati Pravritti, the lustrous Pravritti. And Vyasa had beautifully said at the time that Hridaya Pundarike Dharayato Ya Buddhi Samvid Buddhi Sattvam Hi Bhaswaram Akasha Kalpam. So there is this luminous, so Bhaswaram means luminous, Akasha Kalpam Buddhi Sattvam, which arises when Hridaya Pundarike Dharana happens. So in the lotus of the heart, when there is Dharana, there is this luster, the luminosity that the yogi perceives, realizes. In the Bhojavritti also it was nicely said in 1.36, it was said Jyotihi Shabdena Satvika Prakasha Uchyate. So this is the Satvika Prakasha, Aloka. Aloka means which illumines. And illumines so that the senses can grasp and understanding can happen. So here often in the Shastra texts, Aloka doesn't necessarily refer to seeing by the eyes. It is what is referred to as Jnana Vishaya, something through which understanding can happen. So here in 1.36 there was this Jyotishmati Pravritti, and that is the reference. Now that Aloka, that illuminative power, Nyasat, by assigning, by allocating it to some place, what happens? There is a certain siddhi. That siddhi is Sukshma Vyavahita Viprakrishta Jnanam. The yogi obtains knowledge of something that is otherwise not available because it may be too sukshma, too subtle, too minute to be grasped through the senses. But by using this Jyotishmati Pravritti and then assigning it to a certain sukshma entity, the yogi can get the jnanam of that sukshma, that subtle entity. Similarly, Vyavahita, something that is otherwise obstructed. Okay, an example is given, for example, something that is, say, below the earth, underground, so not perceivable through senses. However, through this assigning or using this or doing the nyasa, what is referred to as nyasa of this pravritti, the lustrous pravritti, even things that are otherwise obstructed can become an object of jnanam to the yogi, and he can realize and get knowledge about those. Similarly, Viprakrishta, which means not that it is necessarily obstructed or that it is necessarily too small or subtle, but it may be something that is too far away. So, for example, sitting here, suppose I want to have knowledge of something on the Himalayas. So, that is too far away. However, by bringing about this Jyotishmati pravritti and then that aloka, by making it, assigning it to on the Himalayas, nyasa, making it touch the Himalayas, the yogi can get knowledge of the thing that may be far away, that may be viprakrishta. So therefore, this is the siddhi coming from the sanyama on that particular aloka that is coming from the Jyotishmati pravritti. So that is the sutra pravrityalokanyasat sukshma vyavahita viprakrishta jnanam. Now let us look at the short bhashya on this, where Vyasa clearly makes the connection because the sutra doesn't mention Jyotishmati. So then Vyasa, he says Jyotishmati pravrittirukta manasaha. So the Jyotishmati pravritti with relation to the manas has already been mentioned. So this is a reference back to the first chapter. Tasyam ya alokaha tam yogi. So whatever aloka, the illuminative power from that Jyotishmati pravritti, with that tam yogi sukshme va vyavahite va viprakrishte va arthe vinyasya tam artham adhigacchati. The yogi can then take that particular aloka and then make it reach some entity that is subtle or otherwise obstructed or too far on such an object, vinyasya, making it reach there. Tam artham, that object, adhigacchati, he reaches there and therefore he attains the jnanam of that, he gains knowledge of that. So that is Vyasa clearly explaining what is the sutra referring to, what is the sanyama in question, and what is the siddhi, the fruit or the special power arising from this particular sanyama. So that is Sutra 3.25 and its bhashya.
So, pravrutyalokanyasa sukshma vyavahita viprakrishta jnanam, a kind of siddhi which is being mentioned. Now, this is called pravrutti aloka nyasa. Pravrutti, you just now heard that when yogi's mind is engaged in something or involved in something, there is unusual outcome. Like suppose our mind is involved in something, what at most will happen to us? Very limited will happen to us. But therefore, yogi has Vishoka pravrutti, Jyotishmati pravrutti, such pravrittis are mentioned in the first chapter. So that pravrutti has a light by itself. Even generally our knowledge is always a light. It's called jnana prakasha in vernacular expression. So our jnana is always a beam of light. And that is how the knowledge is of the nature of light or luminosity. Now our jnana prakasha, our luminosity of knowledge is restricted in so many realms, for so many reasons. That something is very, very, very subtle, we will not be able to sight it unless we take recourse to mechanical insights such as microscope, electron microscope. For our naked eyes, it is not visible. There are so many things in the world which are microscopic objects and electron microscopic objects. So the normal vision of the eyes will not be able to cast any beam of jnana prakasha and perceive it. So the things are so very subtle, and that's why in normal empowerment to human embodiment, it is beyond reach. Our ray of light cannot reach it because that is extremely subtle. And therefore that realm is closed for us, generally and normally, unless we have some mechanical devices such as I said, microscope, electron microscope. We will not be able to get that object within our light of knowledge, nor our light of knowledge reach that object. The other one is vyavahita. It's also human limitation because something cannot be seen just because it is veiled. Like things beyond the opaque wall cannot be seen. So that's a limitation of human jnana shakti. That certain things which are veiled, covered, we will not be able to reach that object, or our knowledge will not be able to reach it, or nor that object will able to reach our knowledge. It is just because it is vyavahita. Something inside a box cannot be sighted. Something inside a container which is opaque cannot be sighted. But with this pravrutti aloka nyasa, yogi has pravrutti aloka. It's a beam of light which can fall on the invisible object for normal human perception, cognition. But by the touch of that, yogi can get vision of something which is very, very, very subtle. Why is it that the light rays emitted by very subtle things don't reach our eyes and we don't see it? It is because it is very subtle. Or the jnana shakti cannot go to that object because it is very subtle. Therefore, we cannot know it, that being very subtle. And that's why we take recourse to mechanical insights such as microscope, electron microscope. So when we take them under the microscope, we can be sighting them. So we need to depend upon extraneous factors in case of very subtle things, sukshma vishayas. Whereas when we take recourse to microscopes and electron microscopes, yogi takes recourse to this aloka nyasa. Aloka means his jnana shakti, luminosity of his jnana shakti. So that is allocated to that object which is otherwise not visible by being very, very, very subtle, extremely subtle. But that becomes visible for a yogi because of the pravrutti aloka. And such things become visible to us because of microscope and electron microscope. They don't need it. What is replacing microscope and electron microscope, mechanical devices, is aloka and nyasa. He can deploy that luminosity which is subjectivistic, and therefore the sukshma vishayas will become known to him. So also about vyavahita vishayas. There are certain things which are veiled, something which is beyond the walls. This is not an object of vision for us. It is because of the opaque wall in between. So wherever the containers are opaque, you cannot see what is inside. Because it is vyavahita. It is enveloped by a body of thing which is opaque. And therefore you cannot be having your insight into it. Whereas, now we will take recourse to mechanical device such as X-rays. Describe some people as X-ray vision. That means they can see inside, we cannot see wherever. When common man cannot be seeing something internal, some one can see something internal, and then we figuratively say that this person has X-ray vision. So X-ray gives us something which is veiled by opaque matter. That is what the X-ray is. So Vyavahita Vishayas also will become known to him because of this pravrutti nyasa. And then finally, viprakrushtha jnanam. Some certain objects are too remote, too far, too distant, and therefore they are invisible to us. They are not small, but they are remote. Like there are so many stars. They are not small in dimensions. They can be huge. They can be larger than the sun, larger than the celestial body that we know about, but yet we cannot see because they are too far, too remote, where we need a telescope. So we will take recourse to mechanical assistance of telescope or radio telescope or Hubble telescope, and then we will be able to sight. Now, yogi has an option. He doesn't have to take recourse to mechanical instruments such as telescope and radio telescope and Hubble telescope. His pravrutti nyasa, the luminosity of subjectivistic light, will reach any distance, and therefore there will be viprakrushtha jnanam. So yogi has a superhuman ability. Where human ability fails, yogis doesn't fail. So he has the pravrutti aloka. Aloka, the light. By his pravrutti, by his vritti as a yogi, he develops light in his vritti. And that light can be deployed, that can be allocated wherever yogi wants to. And that light will give him the knowledge that is needed. That is called sukshma jnanam, vyavahita jnanam, viprakrushtha jnanam. Subtle, veiled, and remote. So which is otherwise not possible for human faculties, it is possible for yogi without taking recourse to any mechanical extraneous instrument such as microscope, telescope, etc., or X-ray. He'll be able to have this vision because of pravrutti aloka, the light of his pravrutti. See, our pravrittis don't have light. We might be having pravrutti. Somebody is quiet person, serene person, but it doesn't have that aloka. Whereas all the yogis' pravrittis of noble conditions such as tranquility, neutrality, virginity, etc., they will have luminosity of their own because of the subjectivistic radiation. And that aloka is prakasha, and yogi is able to invest it somewhere, deploy it somewhere, allocate to something which otherwise becomes unattainable knowledge. Yogi can attain such unattainable knowledge. Therefore, there is no unattainable knowledge for a yogi because of pravrutti, aloka, and the nyasa. This is what the sutra is mentioning. Okay.
Okay. So with that, we have covered Sutra 3.25. We'll stop here for today. Next time we'll continue with 3.26. Let's recite the shlokas on Guruji and stop for today. Vajñānikam pravaktritva āsaneshu kalavidam योगाभ्यासे च तत्त्वज्ञं वन्देऽहं सुन्दरं गुरुं योगवृक्षो हि लोकेऽस्मिन् यत्प्रेरणेन वर्धितः योगाचार्यगुरो तुभ्यं सुन्दराय नमो नमः. Thank you.
Namaskar, all of you.